Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rich Fields. Welcome to the Buzzer Beat. And now, here's your host, Chorsie Calvert.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Buzzer Beat. First of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for such a strong amount of support in the first episode of Rich Fields. I know you're going to be really excited once you see the name of this next one. So without further ado, let's get right into introducing my next guest here on the Buzzer Beat, Randy West.
A new car!
Randy, I can always depend on you. I'll bet you have a name for us.
Bob, I've got that name. Let's introduce Patricia Powis. Come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine. You never know what's going to happen on Supermarket Sweep.
Randy West's voice is familiar to TV viewers, especially those who are game show lovers, from his decades of introducing hosts, describing prizes, announcing award show nominees, narrating crime shows, describing contestants' exciting supermarket sweeps, and challenging Big Brother house guests. Those with more discerning ears may recognize his versatility in voicing commercials for a wide range of national advertisers, including McDonald's, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Mattel, Nestle's, Ore-Ida, and AT&T. Randy is also a published author specializing in television history. The success of his book, Johnny Olson, Voice in Time, led to opportunities to pen articles and features, as well as invitations to speak on television and radio at a number of colleges and universities. His 2022 release, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, is a backstage pass to the purest form of reality TV, as it reveals the most outrageous behind-the-scenes truths, triumphs, and heartbreaks. It's a compelling read that guarantees you'll never watch TV the same way again. After this conversation, I left feeling truly empowered and ready to dig my heels even deeper into the wonderful world of the game show industry. Without further ado, let's get the wheel spinning. Randy West, what's your buzzer beat? I grew up obsessed with Game Show Network, not the common thing that kids are obsessed with, but truly, I believe I learned how to read and speak by looking at the puzzle board of Wheel of Fortune type of deal. So for me, game shows have been so integral to my growth, to the man that I've always desired to be and always aspired to work in game shows. So being able to have these conversations with, like I said, legitimate legends and icons who I grew up idolizing and never thought I would be able to speak with. It's been such an honor. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's your passion and interest and love for the thing that inspires me afresh, anew, every time I get to talk with somebody who's as passionate as I am. And still am. That's amazing to me. My first shot as a contestant, the first entry into the world was 1970. I'm not really clear. It was 69, 70, or 71. And I was a contestant on What's My Line out of New York with Wally Bruner, and Soupy Sales guessed me. I came onto the show because of a relationship I was building as a kid at the time, a teenager, with Johnny Olson, who was announcing the show. And he and I got to know each other, and they ran short on an episode. And Dick DeBartolo, who's a name folks who have hung around Goodson shows know. And he said, Johnny said, use this kid, he'll be great. And so they just threw me onto an episode, and that was it. I was hooked for life.
Honestly, that's all it takes. As someone who, again, I was watching a lot of Password, Concentration, What's My Line, To Tell the Truth, transition into, Match Game, early, Price is Right when it was only 30 minutes, things like that. So for me, I got the bug fairly early, and it honestly never left. It just kind of grew and transformed to where I was now investigating and learning about game shows internationally and kind of studying the differences in how hosts conduct themselves. As a kid, I also grew up watching a lot of like the Nickelodeon game shows of Guts, Legends of the Hidden Temple. So that was also fascinating, seeing the differences in how those are done. That being said, your career literally expands more game shows that I could even put into words. I was doing a little bit of this investigating, and the actual list of shows that you have worked on and have been a part of, whether it's been television, in casinos, and even some of the live touring productions, which I found out recently. I I can tell you have the bug just as much as I do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I wanted into the business, couldn't figure out a way in, so just kept appearing as a contestant because I was around it. You know, most people think you want to get on to get rice-a-roni or cash or a new car, but in reality, I just wanted to be on game shows to see how it all works, meet the producers, and I learned something very early on that if you're a good player on a game show, the producers will often call you back into the offices because they're always developing new shows, new games. And you could invent chess or checkers, and it would be a boring game if played by people who aren't competitive or don't understand the game necessarily and don't emote. If you jump to the other guy's checker, you go, "Yeah, I got you." There's some energy that you bring. A good game player does. So after appearing on these shows, I was in all these people's production offices at Bill Carruthers and at Goodson's offices, and just to play games. And here's $25. I'll do it for nothing. So it's fascinating to see how they actually came together and developed. That to me was like, wow. When you have a really good doctor doing the surgery, for an analogy's sake, it looks easy, it looks simple. And how do you know that's the aorta? Well, these people who've been doing this kind of surgery on game shows their whole life know how to, make the subtle changes that, bam, wow, that's a whole lot better. So I would go into, let's say, Goodson, for example, and do a show. They had a great run-through studio with cameras and everything up on the 15th floor at 6430 Sunset. It was just a marvelous environment because they were a factory, the premier factory, and they had all the accoutrement, all the accessories to really put on a run through for the networks to come see. And working with those professionals in that room, in that environment with these brains. I mean, there were people whose names, Howard Felsher and Jonathan Goodson, and, so many of the producers who were doing other shows, Frank Wayne. I mean, these Jay Wolpert. I mean, these were geniuses. And to watch them manipulate a show was a tremendous learning experience. I'd go back the following week and it was all different. And I was like, wow, they were able to see what might have worked or didn't work or whatever and fix it, and change it. That just fascinated me. And I got the chance to do that even when Jay Wolpert went out on his own from the Goodson camp. I got to do that at his production company and so many others. So being a contestant was a way into that world.
Honestly, what a dream job. You got to go in, play these games, give feedback, and help kind of cultivate what we know in the industry now. That is amazing. I guess I've never really considered or thought about the fact of there has to be a development portion of all of these legendary shows. There has to be test runs to make sure that it reads well. And another point I want to echo, which I think is so very important, because I recently just started my journey of auditioning for some game shows,
Right.
is it is entertainment first and foremost. So you're absolutely right. If your personality has to shine through, you have to be an entertaining contestant that not only do the producers want to see, but the country will want to see. And it doesn't always necessarily mean someone that will be rooted for, but someone that will bring viewership into the program.
There you go. You could be the villain, it's sort of the way wrestling is cast, a hero and a villain kind of thing. People may not like you, but if you compel viewership, and that's sort of what was going on with the original 21 when Charles Van Doren was up against, help me with the name, the city worker from New York, from City College, but he took the dive, Herb Stempel. Herb Stempel was the nerd, kind of the underdog, and you didn't necessarily like him against Van Doren, who was erudite, college teacher, but he played a role in those games that they kept having ties and kept these two guys battling each other week after week after week. Stempel was the nerd, and you didn't really want him to win, but it was compelling viewing. And that you hit on that exactly. It's not necessarily somebody you love, but somebody who's going to draw eyeballs.
Absolutely. I am curious. because I'm not sure if there is an answer to this question. With someone with such an illustrious career as yourself, was there a game show or a production that you saw that you never had the opportunity to work on, but you wish you would have, or wish you had the opportunity to?
After working on The Price is Right with Bob Barker, that's it. I mean, that was the top. So, I mean, yeah, were there other shows I was auditioning for or possibly being hired for or did a pilot for and wasn't, ultimately hired for series? Sure. If you loiter in show business long enough, you've got a million of those opportunities that came and went and didn't quite score, you didn't get hired for. But once you get this chance to stand on the Bob Barker stage, Studio 33, Television City, and Bob looks to you and actually looks to camera. He's only about 8 feet away from you, which isn't very far. And he says, "Now, Randy, what's the name of our next contestant?" I had a quick moment there where I almost went, he's talking to me. He's talking to me. I mean, for a moment, there's a flash. It was like, this is actually happening. This is the coolest thing in the world. Because Johnny Olson was my mentor. I met him as a teenager, and he's been a through line through everything I've done over the decades of being in the business. It always seems to revert back to something he taught me about warm up or how to mark copy as an announcer so that you don't make a bunch of mistakes. In 58 years, virtually nobody remembers him ever screwing up copy. And there was a reason, because he marked all that copy. Even after 50 plus years in the business, he would take a pencil and, make the markings that would help him read flawlessly. Beethoven might have written a tune hundreds of years ago, but if you give it to a musician today, the notations, the notes, the rests, the beats, the measures, the sharps, the flats, you give it to a musician today, he can play it almost identically to the way Mozart envisioned it because of the notations, the complex system of music notation. Johnny had a very complex system for marking copy that he shared with me. I still use it, and it's impossible to make a mistake. I mean, because it's all there. Once you hear it in your head and you make those markings, you can't blow it. So I was thrilled to have that opportunity to, when Barker said, "Now, Randy, what's it?" or "Tell him what's the kind of car is that, Randy?" That kind of thing. I knew I was able to deliver concisely, properly, cohesively what the show needed. And that's another point over many where Johnny played a role in my life. But as far as missing out on opportunities, there were many on the way up. But the minute I got to do that, the others were like water under the bridge, kind of meaningless.
I absolutely, that makes sense. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. Honestly, like you said, I feel like once you hit that peak where it's like, oh, Bob Barker stage with Bob Barker, Price is Right.
Yeah.
Career is set.
Exactly.
You can live with that joy for the rest of your life,
Yeah, and they loved me down there. I mean, this is not me blowing my horn, but Roger Dobkowitz, Kathy Greco. I mean, I got along so well with these people. And Johnny, they often said to me, "God, you've got some of the same skills that Johnny has." And, well, Johnny taught me this business, so it was such wonderful to come in there every day, have homage paid to the guy who at that point had been dead since 1985. So 95, well, like 20 years he's gone. But to have his name come up in conversation periodically with the folks who worked with him and hear some of the little stories that, added to my appreciation for him was fascinating. It was a wonderful time. And the only reason I wasn't there longer, and who knows, maybe even still there, was that Fremantle was mounting The Price is Right Live, the stage show that went around the country. It still is 21 years after Todd Newton and I kicked it off. We started together on that in Reno, Nevada, 21 years ago. I'd still be, I think, or certainly would have been a whole lot longer till Barker left. Barker liked me and Roger liked me. So I just still been there. But Fremantle was like, no, this is a big opportunity for us to get this show on the road and establish it. And we really want to have some folks that we, have confidence in. So I didn't win like the Miss America, crown year after year after year by staying there year after year after year. But I won Miss Congeniality because they chose me from the folks who were auditioning and who had been on and off the show for a period there where we were trying to replace Rod. Dear Rod. They chose me from that group of people and said, no, this is the guy we want to have established this road show. So that in itself was a whole beginning of a whole other career, because I did Price is Right Live for on and off for 20 years and did Wheel of Fortune live, even though one's Sony and one's Fremantle. It's actually the same production company, stages both. Secret. Yeah. So when it came time to kick off Wheel Live, I got the call to go on short notice down to Atlanta and do what it is I do. And since then have done other productions in casinos and live venues for other producers. One of them called Game Show America, and they do a program called the Game Show Extravaganza. And we'll be working again. I don't know exactly when you're going to air this, but I know you know that on May 31st and June 1st of this year, 2024, the world of game shows will be convening in Burbank, California for the first Quiz Show Expo. And the Game Show America folks will be there to have the equipment and the podiums and all that for the games that we'll be playing on that weekend.
I'm so excited. I wish I could be there. I do have some prior commitments, and unfortunately make me unavailable for that. But I can't stop talking about it because I've never experienced, I think, so I am from living currently in Columbus, Ohio. I've been in the Midwest kind of my entire life. So out here, I have to do a lot more intensive research to kind of find my community, so to speak, and like finding those like ultra super fans of game shows, because it's not as readily accessible out here in the Midwest. And so when I do find people out here every now and then, like one of my friends, Christian Dixie, who has played on Wheel of Fortune twice now. He was actually brought back last season as one of the fan favorites. When I was living in Indiana, was like maybe 30, 40 minutes away from me. And so like having someone who understands, who grew up, like I said, obsessed with GSN, watching all these game shows, loving them, it's such a special bond and it's such a special friendship. So I genuinely wish I could be in that room to feel that energy, because I know this is going to be such an amazing time.
Yeah. Everyone, it seems, will be there, from the producers down to the celebrity panels, panelists and the partners that everybody loves. Teresa Ganzel and Vicki Lawrence, and if I start naming names, I'll leave a few thousand out. But there's going to be, it seems, maybe 70 or 80 confirmed celebrities or workers in the business who will all be there, and we're still a month away. So this is going to be quite the event. Quite the event. So very excited about that.
I would love to hear your take about your experiences working on some of the live touring productions. Last year, when we initially did Buzzer Beat, I got the opportunity to chat with Todd Newton, who was so incredibly kind and just such the energy and joy that I got from the computer screen was infectious. And I was bouncing off the walls for weeks after, talking about, I cannot believe I got this opportunity to chat with this gentleman. And I've done The Price is Right live once, and I've done Wheel of Fortune live twice.
Great.
When I did Price is Right live, my host was actually Mark L. Wahlberg.
Sure.
And I remember sitting in the Ohio Theater, and I was with my roommate, Nick. And in all honesty, I was trying to figure out how we were going to get the energy there. Like when you think Price is Right, you think that opening credit with the lights on the border, right? And everyone just going bananas in the audience, yelling and screaming and just like pure joy with total strangers, right?
Yeah.
Like people coming from all across the country. And I was like trying to figure out, how are you going to be able to replicate that energy? And I cannot tell you folks enough. It was like a light switch. The moment the lights started shining on the curtain and the music started pumping through the audience, that was it. That was like everyone understood the cue. Everyone immediately bought into it. And it was the energy in that experience is something I've never felt before in my life. Like it is such an incredible moment. And I went into the tour a little unsure about how do you replicate that energy. I have to tell you from firsthand experience, it's there. It's absolutely there.
Well, the audience bonds outside, and we all have love of the show in common. It's the first time I came in to do warm up for the studio audience at CBS. I was ready to, do what it is I do to get people from 0 to 60, and they were already at 50. So there wasn't a whole lot for me to do except to accept the love and feed the energy back to them and give them a few directions. When I call your name, don't lollygag, just pop right up, get yourself to the aisle, step on toes if you have to, get down here. When you call up on stage, follow Bob. Bob goes to that door number over there, go to that door. Bob goes to the turn, go to the train. Bob goes to his dressing room, follow him there, wherever he goes. So there were some fun things that would add to the energy and help to instruct the audience, frankly, because you see it on TV, but in person, it's a little different. You don't realize, oh, I should actually not go there, but stay here. Okay. When you win, what do you do? That kind of thing. Yeah. But people bond over that show 52 years. Most people have, on the planet can't remember life before The Price is Right. Yeah, quite an institution. And my goodness, the live show had all the energy of the television show. We never had to worry about, will the audience be that excited? Yeah, they were there to have fun. You lose all inhibition, you lose cynicism and sarcasm and, oh, I've been waiting too long. Nobody, you could wait 48 hours. And the minute you get into that studio or into the showroom and the lights and the logos, it's like, wow, this is great. Brings out the best in everybody, and having a chance to feed off that energy. Wow. And you mentioned Todd. I just got to tell you, the first game show Todd ever did was 1999 Hollywood Showdown.
Yeah.
And we were teamed by Sandy Stewart for that show, and hit it off immediately because he'd known I had done game shows before. But beyond that, we just had a simpatico. So, he would occasionally ask me something before, what do you think about this? And I'd come up with an answer that seemed to, enhance his sense of what plays well, because he's a genius in front of a camera, a genius. So it was such a wonderful energy. And when we ended up reteamed on The Price is Right live station, we did over 2,000 performances together. No two alike, because the people are different.
Yes.
And not one of them was ever boring, because I'll tell you this secret, if you're sort of facing the host and the host is facing you, one eye is downstage and can be seen by the audience. The other eye, half of your face, is upstage and can be seen by the host. So we would like wink to each other at those crazy moments that were just like, are you going to be able to pull this out of the fire, Todd? Because something would go amiss with it, maybe a game equipment, or a contestant is just sort of like doesn't understand the game, or, there's a moment there where Todd's called upon to, pull it together, where it's not just phoning it in, where he needs to be there and really be a catalyst. And we'd look at each other and wink at each other, so no two shows out of a couple thousand were ever the same. Can't speak enough about the wonderful time we had together all around town, for Hollywood Showdown and other games here, but on the road especially. He and I will remain friends forever. And you had the chance to see that the kindness in that man's heart. He's really a wonderful guy.
Absolutely. I remember at one point during the interview, he made a point just to ask about like how my family was doing. And it was just such a genuine, tender moment in that interview, because I was like, he did not have to ask that question, but I could tell in that moment, he genuinely wanted to know and genuinely cared about the response that I was going to give. And it was just like, it felt like a hug is the best way to describe the interview. It felt like just a warm embrace of just pure positivity, a celebration, like finding community of those who have a shared interest. Especially because I was a bit younger when I did that interview. Mm-hmm. I look back and was like, oh, I was struggling to contain my excitement when that happened. I was really, because like I said, up until I think Todd, of the 4 episodes I had done for that, I think Todd was the 3rd interview I had conducted. So I'd gotten, Christian was first, and then Ryan Chafee from Masterminds and the Tournament of Champions at Jeopardy was the 2nd. And then it was like, Todd, because I remember, because like before I'd even sent the email, I was actually watching Whammy, the all new Press Your Luck. And because I grew up obsessed with the original Press Your Luck, I thought it was fascinating. I loved the little whammies. And so, like, seeing this revamp on GSN and seeing this down to earth and charismatic host leading the forefront in this was such an incredible experience. Never did I think in my wildest dreams I'd be able to sit down and just have a one-on-one conversation. And really, like, one of the goals with this production overall has just been sending that message, send that email and see what happens. And it really is a testament to how kind people have been, because as many times I've just sent the email, almost every single time people have just been like, yeah, let me know what time works for you. And it's so amazing.
It's great. And you know, you're a big part of the why that episode is so much fun to watch, because your energy comes through the screen as well. I mean, your passion and enthusiasm in talking with Todd and the others that you've done, it comes right through. And I'm feeling it now too. You're having a good time. I can tell. You can't fake that smile. No dentist, no dentist could put those teeth together that way. That's real. I love that you mentioned Press Your Luck, because that is the story everybody always wants to talk to me about. The show had been picked up by CBS, but had not yet been on the air. And I knew contesting coordinators from the many shows I had been on before. I was on 9 broadcast shows total. So I'm in the files of people to call for run-throughs, or when a new show is starting up. You know, a show's on the air. If you'd like to be a contestant on it, everybody writes down the phone number. But if the show's not been on the air yet, well, where do we find people? You know, so I had the opportunity to be called early, and I was on episodes 9, 10, and 11 before the show aired, and got to see what made that show so magic even before it hit the air. And Bill Carruthers was one of the people who called me back to do more run-throughs and presentations and stuff like that. But I was as I'm told, the first retired champion, because at the time, 25,000 was your last day. You could win more, but that was your last day. All that was carryover from 20 years previously in the quiz show scandals. They didn't want to have all that high money going around again. But so I got my 25, I ended up at about 29,000 in 3 days, got a new car and a bunch of, you know, other fun stuff, a trip to Puerto Vallarta and a boatload of cash. But more than that was the thrill of being on this futuristic set. Now, I subsequently came to know Ed Flesh, who was one of the great set designers. We worked together on Supermarket Sweep and other shows. But Ed had designed the most amazing thing to make that show a reality. You know, nowadays, computers can do pretty much anything you can imagine in your mind that a good programmer can sit down and code. But in those days, to get those squares to keep changing between a whammy and a dollar amount or a Flotaki rug or whatever, those were slide projectors, 3 each aimed at the same square. And there were how many squares? You had like 58 slide projectors. And if one goes off and the other one goes on, it's a slow fade. Ed and I were talking about this. You know, if you power through, one goes dim and the other one's coming up, and well, which is the prize at that moment? Because you get 2 at the same time, as there's like a crossfade. So he developed a system with shutters. So when you switch from one machine to the other, shutters would eliminate the crossfade and just create a momentary change, if you follow. Yeah. So standing backstage, waiting to come on to the set, it's like, this is the noisy. How is this not part of the audio? You know, you got open microphones. How is this not coming through? Somehow it didn't, obviously. But from behind the board, 58 slide projectors. It was crazy. It was just crazy. And I have so many great memories from that experience, not only because the win on the second episode was pulled out of the fire. I was more than, I think, something $5,000 and a couple $100 behind. And we're down to one last spin, and the guy who's ahead by $5,000 gives me the spin. No way, this guy's, you know, no, there's no way. And I'm thinking, I got to get that something with another spin, 5,000, another spin, big bucks, big bucks, big bucks. I hit the thing. It's not big bucks. It's somewhere else. It's a car. It landed. I didn't even see a car earlier in the episode. So I'm looking, I think I lost because I didn't get the big bucks. This is the last spin in the show, and it's a car, and it's worth just enough. And I mean, talk about drama. I mean, that was the most amazing thing, the most amazing. Yeah. And I subsequently, as I say, worked for Bill Carruthers and became friendly with his son, Bill Jr. He hates being called Junior. It's actually BYL as opposed to Bill, BILO. But because the two are synonymous in sound, I'll just say Bill Jr. And I became great friends from that appearance and remained so until his death last year. We were so tight. And the thrill for him was when Fremantle revived the show as part of the ABC Summer of Games. We went down together to Television City again, but this time stage 36, sat in the control room, watched the show, went down for many of the tapings. And every time it aired, whether we'd been in the studio together, Bill Jr. and I, would call me as the show was on the air. Did you see? They cut that part, but I like the way they edited that. Oh, she was so good, And we would just carry on like little kids. Here's the son of the guy who created the show, still with that energy. And the most amazing thing was he had developed a motion picture based on the Larson story, the guy who memorized the board, right? And he had a deal, a motion picture deal. Now, it had been optioned before, but had never come to fruition. But now he had another company that was doing a script to do a dramatization of that crazy episode and the whole mystique around Press Your Luck. And so he had to dig back through his memory and the paperwork to resurrect as much information as he could for the people doing the script. And he shared stuff with me in the last year of his life that blew me away. He got deep into exactly why they red flagged Larson, thinking he might be a problem contesting because he was a quirky kind of guy, but he had an energy and had made the trip just from the Midwest just to do this show. And there was a compelling part of the story. So should we use him? Should we not use him? We use him, not use him. They decided to go with him, quirks and all. And that was after a few producers had a chance to interview him. And among the amazing things I learned from Bill was the guy who took him off the set when he finally left, the last performance, the last spin. Mm-hmm. He said, wow. And he says, am I in trouble? Larson said, am I in trouble? Because he memorized the board. And they had thought of stopping tape because it's not rigging. I mean, the guy used his brain to his own advantage. But there was a question: what are we doing? Is this going to go forever? Is this legal? Should this air? I mean, it had all these questions, and among them was Larson thinking he was going to be in big trouble. They were going to call the police on him or something. And Bill was just like, rather than tell him no, he said, "Well, tell me about it. What do you think you've done wrong?" This kind of stuff. So he was able to pick his brain and told me what Larson was afraid of and how he felt and how sweated he was out of nervousness and how he had memorized the board because he came clean with all this information. And the most amazing piece of it is, and you must have wondered the same thing, here's a guy now who has obviously mastered the board and could probably do this forever because he would just went on and on and on and on. Why did he stop? Why did he stop when he did? Yeah. Have you ever thought of that? And no one's ever had a good answer, but there was a great answer. And I'll share it with you. And nobody else has ever heard this story because Bill is no longer with us and didn't share it with many people. The ice cream guy, retired or former ice cream vendor, Larson, didn't have the money to come to LA, but he had a friend who had some money. And he said to him, I can get on the show and I can win unlimited money. And he showed him his frame by frame stop VCR. And he was able to convince this guy he could really predict the board. The guy put up the money for both of them to fly. And there was one codicil that the financier, if you will, insisted upon. He says, if I tell you to stop, I want you to stop because I don't think we should do this forever. I think we'll get in trouble if this goes on and on and on endlessly. And you got to be willing to stop if I say stop. Otherwise, I'm not funding this trip and we're not doing it. And they had this blood agreement, if you will. So occasionally during the show, Larson turns around to his friend in the audience. And when his friend said stop, he stopped. Why did they stop at $110,000? Because it cost them $10,000 to get out here with a hotel and airfare and all that. And they figured each of us goes home with 50 grand. That's enough. And that's why he stopped what he did. The friend said, let's do 50 grand each and expenses and pull the plug on it. And that is why
Wow.
he stopped when he stopped, and could have gone indefinitely because he had it. He had it. He had the routine down pat, but that was why. That was why. And Bill shared all this kind of information with me, and it's all such a fascinating chapter in game show history. I mean, there's maybe 10 great moments or crazy moments in game shows, and that's clearly one of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So my next question is, I was on your website and I was looking at a picture of you celebrating the 1,000th episode, if I remember correctly, of Supermarket Sweep, which, first of all, the cake looked incredible.
It
I
was.
wish I could have been there to have a slice of that cake. But that show was so fundamental to my love of game shows and actually got me interested in grocery shopping, to be perfectly honest. Grocery shopping was never the same for me after that. Regularly, even to this day, I am 29 years old, but I do sometimes still have to resist the urge to, take a nice little jaunt down an aisle trying to find
Oh,
whatever the most
sure.
expensive premium meats I could find, with only the limit of grabbing 5 to put in my cart.
Well, I know you want to bounce a bevy of butterball birds into your basket and head down to the meat section. That's where those giant sides of beef can really beef up your score. But get 5 of those Farmer John gold wrapped hams and you're in business. But look out, the other team may go back to the center aisle and all those small beauty aids projects. Those products will really boost up their score. And look, they're going for the cheese, the giant wedges of cheese. They'll get their limit of 5. But you're making that. Look, a bonus. You've got to get back before the time is up, and you will have maybe $250 more for your score, and on and on and on. I loved doing that. Loved it.
I can only imagine. So compared to the other game shows that we've talked about, where it has been a bit more of a traditional set, a
Yeah.
studio, if you will, I am so curious about the logistics of Supermarket Sweep, because if I remember correctly, I feel like the audience had to move when it was going from like the main game into the final like big sweep, because I logistically, that studio had to go through some transformations to fit an entire supermarket inside of it. What was that like, the day-to-days of making Supermarket Sweep happen?
Well, you're right about having to reposition everything because of where the sweep is and where the audience is and where the front game play is. So we did 5 of the front games and then came back and had those same players in a row do the 5 sweeps. So they weren't like you just won, now let's do the sweep. You just won, chill for a couple hours while we do other front parts of the game, and then we'll do the sweep. Yeah, so there was accommodation for that. You got a great eye. We were at the show over the years, had been originally in supermarkets and then went to different studios. But for the final years that we did it with Al Howard, it was at NBC right across the hall from where Jay Leno ended up. But when we were doing it, To Tell the Truth and Family Feud with Louis Anderson were across the hall. So we got to hang out with those guys in between. And it looks like a supermarket because it ostensibly is. There were a couple of cheats because, on the earlier versions of the show, if you brought out the meat or the turkeys or the hams and put them under the hot lights for too long, they would start to bleed. So if people would be running around with blood on them, it is not a good thing. So those were props. And so there were a couple of corners cut here and there. But the giant wedges of cheese were giant wedges of Jarlsberg, and they were delicious because at the end of each season, we got to take them home. So I would have 2 or 3 of them because I got first dibs on them, I guess. Other people there were about 20 of them total, so I wasn't hogging it all. And I would have great wine and cheese parties with my neighbors. They would just when does that show up so we can come over to your house again? I mean, because they were like, I don't know how, 20 pounds each. They were heavy. So, and with 2 or 3 of them, you could feed a neighborhood,
Yeah.
It was phenomenal fun. But the show was so different from a traditional show because it wasn't the traditional script, tell them what they won. This running around play-by-play sports, if you will, kind of analogy of capturing the action called for a real different skill set. And I remember being called in there to audition for Al Howard, and he said, Go in the room there. You can't stop and start. Just read to the video. Hit play. You'll see the video and record your audio. If you make a mistake, go back and start again. But I want you to do the sweep, and you've got 15 minutes to get a complete sweep, but you can't stop and start. So I was, oh, geez, this is a mission impossible, So I stopped and restarted a few times, and I realized if I keep doing this, I'm going to run out of time at the end of the 15 minutes. So I just got a good start on one and just kept working my way through it. And when I was done, I brought Al into the room. I said, "Dude, I could do better than this, but I'm really afraid that I was ahead of the action. You can't say what they're doing until they do it. And if you're too late, you're still describing something and they're on to something else. So nobody, that doesn't work either." So I was really self-conscious because it wasn't broadcast ready. And he said, "Oh, you got this. The rest of it will come. It's just that, you do a few of these, you'll have, oh, don't worry, you're hired. Come back tomorrow. And in fact, I want you to do all of the maybe 15 or 20 shows that were already in the can." He wanted to have me revoice. So there was a boatload of work right in front of me, baptism of fire, if you will. And it got so that I was able to get through them, bing, bang, boom, nonstop in real time. And it was such a thrill, like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, because you got to get the piece of the script of what they're doing, and then, read the video, be staring at the video and look down, look, it's kind of crazy making, but it's a special kind of skill. And I got the knack of it. It's just a knack. Anyone could do it with enough practice, I think. And there was a ball when I could thrill the engineer and the producer who were with me at these sessions to be able to, wow, that was great. I thought you were going to screw up, and he dropped the can of peas. No, I had it, man. I had it, So it was a great fun to do this part of the show that was in the studio, and a whole different kind of fun doing those sessions that are the narration, which were done later.
Man, yeah, I remember thinking as a child, as I watched the show, like, this is special. This is different.
Yeah.
This is a very different beast that we're tackling here. But this is very special because of it. It feels almost like a celebration of play that I feel like we don't really get to see or experience as adults, where it's like you're just running through the aisles, grabbing groceries. It is such a free form of just like have fun. Like, it still is a competition. There are still strategies that go into it. I've read when Leslie took over as host of the revamp of Supermarket Sweep, she even talks about the fact that she loved it as a child, watched so many episodes of it, but also studied it to the point that when people were making mistakes during the sweep, would be like, this was not the right decision to make. You should have gone down this aisle, or you didn't maximize this profit. So yeah, it's such a cornerstone of game shows for me, because it truly revamped, in my opinion. Game shows after that didn't have to just be, because I mean, that's around a time of like Shop Till You Drop, right? So it's like we're seeing more like the physical game shows are really starting to come to fruition. And now at this point, it has exploded to things I never even thought possible. Right.
Well, when Al Howard created this thing in the mid-60s, it was totally unique, totally different. And, Al Howard had been an executive at Wall Street, Madison Avenue ad agencies. So he understood the psychology of people wanting to run free through a market. It's a childhood, wow, I just grab anything I want. So he had a real psychological bend on the things that he did, coming up with ad campaigns and stuff, the subliminal sales messages that are in commercials. He had a real tune into what makes people tick. And this was, what can I say, just animal instinct to just want to run through and grab stuff. And he was overseeing every single episode from the 1960s all the way through until we wrapped this thing somewhere in 2000s. He was a wonderful man to work for, and a brilliant mind, and knew how to have fun. The more fun we had, the more fun he had. So it was one of the most memorable jobs that I can remember doing. And there've been a whole lot of them, but that one really, and that and Price is Right are, I think, high points as a performer.
Now, I have to ask this question because I'm so very curious. And I remember a similar question was asked to Kirk Fogg, the host of Legends of the Hidden Temple. Did any of the staff ever, well, you had a little bit of downtime, which I can't imagine was a lot, ever run through and do their own little sweeps?
I wish I had the chance to do that, but it was business. It's as
Yeah,
much as it's the business of fun, it's business because when you've got a crew in there, if you go into overtime, every minute starts to add up in
that is very
dollars.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, so there really wasn't a lot of time to fool around. I'm sure the guys who were working props, and it was a whole team of them to load the shelves and put stuff back. I'm sure they must have in their own time coming in early or leaving late, after the rest of us. I'm sure they must have had their fun with it. But I never got a chance to grab the gold wrap Farmer John hams or load up on the Tide detergent that will turn the tide in this sweep and load up on the bread center or the pounds worth of candy there. All those fun little games that they had. It was a ball to work, but no, I never got to play the game, which is just fine, just fine. And David Ruprecht and I bonded. He's going to be at this quiz show expo at the end of May. If folks if you're seeing this and it isn't May 31st yet, hop on a plane and come to Burbank. You'll have the time of your life if you're a game show fan. But Dave and I bonded from the minute we worked together. We were in a studio in Santa Clarita, which is kind of like half an hour north of Los Angeles. And the air conditioning went out in the studio. It was 1,000,000 degrees under the lights. And we were all sweating. And David, who it was my first day there, he said, "Come on into my trailer. It's air conditioned." I'm like, "But it's your trailer, sir." He's, "No, come on in." I get in there. "Here's a cigar. Come on and make yourself at home." And we've been the best buddies ever since and have had a chance to reunite on many occasions. Price is Right live, as well as just socially. He's been a dear, dear friend.
That brings my heart so much joy to hear that. And I recently did an interview with Rich Fields. So it is so fun and fascinating to just hear these like legends in the industry talk about the memories that you all have and these joyous friendships that are formed by working in this industry. It just brings me so much hope and joy. And I just feel incredibly lucky to be able to have these conversations and to hear these first accounts of these real life, very fascinating world of game shows that not many of us are privy to. So
Well, you
I
bring joy to me because I see through your eyes, the excitement and enthusiasm that you have and I had and still have, but it renews it and reignites it when I get to talk about these things again and see them through your eyes. It's marvelous talking with you. It really is. And your energy and enthusiasm, I mean, it's so infectious to me and to everyone watching, I'm sure, man. Your love of this whole thing is written all over your face and it's charges my battery. Absolutely.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. As we kind of begin to wrap things up, I'm curious, what is kind of your day-to-day life now? What are your next steps? I'm sure you've taken a bit of a back seat and just kind of enjoying life, not having the long 14 to 16-hour days anymore. So yeah, anything that you want to promote, anything that you're doing kind of your day-to-day life now?
Well, I'm having the time of my life. For so many years, it was gig after gig, day after day. I was double booked and triple booked on some production days, trying to get here and there at the same time. And now I've had a chance to take a breath or two, and I'm enjoying so much. I went down to Pat Sajak's last episodes of Wheel of Fortune, hanging out with friends and crew members that we've worked with over the decades who are, here or there, and just reuniting some of these relationships that were happening on the set, but rushed, because it was work, and now going down to visit, seeing each other socially has been a ball. And fresh on my mind is Wheel of Fortune, and they're going to be back in the studio in just a few weeks with Ryan Seacrest. They're doing a very short turnaround hiatus. And, so there's a lot of social activity that's happening, and I'm still doing voiceover for commercials and all manner of stuff, promos, and a lot of personal stuff for people and new shows that are trying to get off the ground who are tight on budget. I'm happy to sit here in my home studio and rip off some audio for them. And the other thing that's kept me busy is I wrote a book based on my relationship with Johnny Olson. When he passed away, his family called me and said, "We have boxes of things that Johnny had saved over the years. And would you be interested in giving them a good home?" Well, the answer was yes. I have microphones and Emmy awards and stuff from his illustrious career, the best television game show announcer that ever was. And there was an autobiography that he started to write. I was surprised. He had a lot to say about his time in radio and then television, game shows included, among other variety shows and things he'd been a part of. And I took his outline and saw where he was going and combined it with the stories he told me over our decades of friendship and was able to turn it into a book, which is Johnny Olson, A Voice in Time. This is his 400-page life story, a lot of it in his own words. I was very happy to see that he committed to paper his recollections of a time when television was just getting off the ground. So I wrote this book as an homage to Johnny to give him some life past his, physical life. And the publisher who picked it up immediately said, "You've got to write another book. This is so great. It's selling so well." And I said, "I'm not a writer." He says, "Well, you are. I just read your first book." So I've spent subsequent years working on this thing, which is 500 pages of great stories, flukes, flakes, feuds, and felonies. It's all the best backstage stories. Larson on Fresh Your Luck and stuff you never heard happening before. The feud between Joan Rivers and Jerry Lewis, the craziness backstage at the Golden Girls. Betty White and B. Arthur did not get along. There was a mafia hit out on Desi Arnaz. Who would have thought? Why would you hit Desi Arnaz? Because he did a show called The Untouchables, which was the story of Al Capone. And Al Capone's widow, May Capone, said, "My husband's name has been dragged through the mud enough already. Don't do that show if you know what's good for you." And he says, "Well, it's a best-selling book. I optioned the rights. And if I don't do it, someone else will." And he went ahead and did the book, the TV show, and she went ahead and issued a hit on his life. And in order to knock somebody off who's high profile, the other families apparently in the mafia have to agree. And she was overridden on this thing because here's the reason now. We don't want to be known as the people who killed Ricky Ricardo, who was a character, of course, but Desi Arnaz so embodied Ricky Ricardo's in people's minds. So, and this story is all true because it's part of congressional record, because the hitman who had the job turned state's evidence and told the whole story to Congress. So there's amazing tales about television that, well, you'll never watch TV the same way again. So I'm very proud of this. I've been fulfilling orders, hundreds of them, over 1,000 that I've done here, never mind Amazon and the other sources for this book. So if I ever really get down to business, I'll write the volume 2 of this, because I've got half of it written already. So it's fascinating stories, and it's just a joy to have been well received on a whole new area, a whole new world. So I may get called again for Wheel of Fortune Live. I'm still in their Rolodex, if there was such a thing still, and on their contact list, I guess would be the contemporary way of putting it. And the folks at Game Show America use me on a regular basis for their game show extravaganza, which plays to both industry, as a corporate events. A company will bring in the game show to their convention, and also plays casinos all around North America with another great 90-minute show in which we give away over $100,000. It makes no sense to me. How do we do that? I still don't get it. Well, the casinos are interested in having people come. So we are able to deliver bodies into the lobby. And the whole secret with casinos is if you can get people in the house, don't worry about picking their pockets. We'll do that. Yeah. Just get them in. Just get them in here. So we have the best part of that job, which is to give them enough money that we sell out these shows. And apparently these casinos make it back before these folks leave for the evening, because they keep inviting the Game Show America to come back and do these shows. So again, that's another thrill to be working with people who have a fully professional game show that moves on the road and that is so well received by a rabid audience who's leaving with cash. Yeah. Serious cash. It's phenomenal. It's such a thrill. I was bitten by the bug as a contestant, watching Johnny Olson and playing my first contestant role in around 1970 on What's My Line, and have had an amazing sequence of events that just sort of happens per chance. You can't really plan. I certainly wasn't able to plan, well, now I'll do this show, and now I'll get to know this producer, and then I'll be called for the. It just happens. And as I look back on it, it's been a hell of a ride, and still is. I'm the luckiest son of a you-know-what on the face of the earth, because if you do what you love for a living, you never work a day in your life. And that's how I feel about it.
That is so very true. I, Randy, thank you so
Oh my.
much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to chat with me.
It's been an absolute joy. I'm so glad you thought to include me in your series of interviews. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I cannot tell you again, as someone who grew up obsessed is the proper word to call it, obsessed with game shows and how much joy they can bring to people, because that's always been my goal in life, is to do things that puts a smile on someone's face. And there's nothing like this industry more than anything else that can truly do that.
Why do you think that is? You know, it's a great question I've been asked. What is it about game shows more than any other form of entertainment that seems to get people, really where they live and with pure joy? What do you think it's all about?
I've thought a little bit about this, and I think it comes down to game shows has the ability to equalize and humanize everyone, no matter what our differences are, no matter viewpoints that we may have of other people. I think in particular, I think about The Price is Right, where again, we have strangers from all across the country who have never met each other. And yet in that studio, once someone is on stage, everyone is genuinely cheering for that one player. There is no other place where you see that happen, where we are genuinely cheering and supporting and giving our advice to help someone else win money. Something about game shows that allows us to let go of our inhibitions, to let go of our preconceived notions of other people and celebrate being in that space at the same time, to celebrate life and joy and the commonality that we all want money, we all want cash and fancy cars, and to do so in such a dramatized way, an entertaining way.
Mhm.
It's an infection that spreads joy unlike any other avenue possible.
Boy, I think you've stated it as clearly as anyone ever has. You really nailed it. I think you should write that out and put it up somewhere. It's the clearest, seriously, the best definition I ever heard. A bunch of strangers from different backgrounds, all together in this pure entertainment and compassionate empathy for each other. I mean, I'm paraphrasing you. You had it, though. You had it. That was it. That was it. I am so appreciative of you thinking of me for this, and I've had an absolute joy. And all I can do is thank you, wish you a happy life and a new car.
Thank you so much.
Hope your dreams come true, my friend.